Today I'm talking to Maria Babaev. She has the #1 real estate team on Long Island for 3 consecutive years and counting. She has been named Top 100 Most Influential Real Estate Leaders by Inman News. She is Pinnacle Award winner in 2014, 2015, and 2016. She has been recognized as the #1 agent on Long Island by Wall Street Journal Real Trends for both transaction volume and average sales price. She has been named Inman Real Estate Influencer in 2017. She and I met at a Patrick Lilly conference last year. When I met her and heard her insight, it was clear why and how she is so successful. I am bringing her on the show today and excited for her to share all of that again. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast is to share knowledge for realtors and raise awareness for Give Back Homes, where real estate professionals work together for social good. Jet Centers Aviation, Bentley Atlanta, Legends Global, thank you for your sponsorship. All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top agents tell how they do it. Today, we have Maria Babaev. You have to say it for me, Maria.
Maria Babaev.
Maria Babaev. The Southern in me is really coming out when I say her last name. But so excited to have her here. We met at a convention with top agents around the country from various companies. She is with Douglas Elliman in Long Island, New York, and quite impressive with her success. She is a top agent. She's been recognized as a #1 agent by the Wall Street Journal in her market in Long Island, New York. That is just one of many of her awards and accomplishments, and she has just really got some powerful insight that I'm excited to share today. So Maria, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Jere, and it's awesome introduction. Thank you.
And tell us, I would love to know, let's just start with just a little bit of your story and how you became a real estate agent.
Great question. I'm in the business for about 15 years. Prior to my real estate career, I was actually on Wall Street, managing portfolio of 130 banks in Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan. I used to work for Citigroup Emerging Markets Division, managing all the banks in the countries of the former Soviet Union. So I have an MBA in finance. I loved what I did on Wall Street because I had to travel a lot and use my native language, Russian. And it was awesome until children came into my life. And then, of course, as we all know, everything changes. And at that time, we moved from New York City to Long Island. I realized that I cannot be traveling this much and be away from my family 2 weeks in a row. And I always had passion for real estate and actually had a license. But when we moved to Long Island, that's when I actually started developing my real estate practice, and originally started with the local company here, worked for them for about 3.5 years, really learned how to be a good agent. Interestingly enough, we all know that majority of our business comes from sphere of influence. Guess what? When I first moved here, I had zero sphere of influence and did not know anyone, and had a newborn. So,
wow. Newborn and no sphere of influence. You were already really busy and you didn't know anybody. So,
exactly.
So how did you do it?
Little by little, getting involved in the community, taking lessons, taking courses in terms of real estate. So proud to say that my very first year in business, I made about $22,000. And the second year in business, I actually took this $22,000 and investing into myself and into marketing, and really trying to figure out how I can position myself and differentiate myself from the rest of the competition, who primarily all of the big brokers were born on Long Island, New Long Island inside.
So that's not an easy market to break into.
Correct. Went to school here, had tremendous sphere of influence, belonged to fancy country clubs and golf courses and things like that. And so what I did, use what you've got, right? So of course I had my education, experience, and expertise coming from the financial markets. At that time, 15 years ago, Russians and Russian buyers were really a hot topic. So I really started kind of using what I've got and applying this to my new business, which is the business of real estate. So I remember taking full page ads in local papers, but instead of writing them in English, I wrote some of the sentences in Russian.
Oh, how smart. Yeah.
That kind of really started catching attention of the potential sellers because that was the local marketing advertising here. And that's how slowly but surely I started positioning myself as an international broker in the local community. In addition to that, I had a TV show on Russian TV. I was on advertising on radio, and really using that connection, experience, and expertise and my prior kind of experiences and applying them into my new career. And the rest is history, really. I mean, my second year happened to be 2005 or four at that time, so the market was relatively strong still, and so I had a lot of referrals from people that I knew, and I started selling little by little, and
yes.
the rest is history. So you take care of your people, and then your people will take care of you in terms of referrals and additional business.
So it sounds like you said you were on TV, you were on radio shows. I mean, was that just after your first year? Did you just kind of go in full force with the
second to third year in the business? Yes, that's what I did. But again, these were specifically Russian stations. It was not
smart
at that time. I mean, that came much later. But yes, that was the very beginning. So I kind of utilized and differentiated myself.
And it sounds like that differentiating yourself is really what got you business. So tell us about your first transaction and how you got your first deal.
I will never forget my first transaction. Believe it or not, it came from a friend that I've met through Mommy and Me group. Okay, that's how
there's your sphere, right? Yeah.
Exactly, and her sister was moving from Queens to Long Island at that time, and I was showing them properties and sold them a house here in Searingtown on Long Island. And simultaneously, I think 2 weeks later, because I was working these two buyers at the same time, another friend of mine who we also had children similar age, and she happened to be Russian. Her mother-in-law was moving from Brooklyn to Long Island to be closer to the family and her grandkids at that time. So I sold her a condo in Roslyn Heights. And I'm still in touch with both of these people and their families. And every time they say, oh,
wow, 15 years later.
You grew so much and, you're doing this and
that. That's cute. I love it. Yeah.
But my head is not big. I always remember how I started and you were the ones. So that's
awesome. So what are you most proud of in your career as a real estate agent over these 15 years?
Well, what I'm most proud of is how I was able to overcome that initial fear, if you will, okay? Because I remember having second thoughts, especially coming from highly organized corporate environment, coming into a real estate business that a lot less organized, let's put it this way, and really developing and establishing myself and starting from scratch. And as we all know, that there's a lot of disappointments and upsets. And I think that ability of dealing with that and really developing much stronger head and much thicker skin and getting up and continue to go no matter what. I think that that's the biggest strength and a skill that I continue to develop and build on. I think that that's probably for new agents just starting in the business. I think that that's the best advice. And then, of course, the accomplishments and acknowledgments and rankings and Wall Street Journal, and the fact that now for the last 3 years we are the top team on Long Island, and being on TV and being especially international buyers in the industry. All of this is fantastic. But as I said, again, my head is not big. We're in the business where every morning we wake up unemployed and we have to start from scratch.
Exactly. I love it. I love what you said about, having thick skin and getting up no matter what, because this business looks really easy from the outside. But, kind of back to what you said, I always think I wouldn't be half the person I am if it weren't for this business. And as much fun as it is glamorous as it can look from the outside, it can also be really challenging and testing. But when you break through all that, it just is fun and makes us better people.
Absolutely.
Can you give us, you're so good, and I hope I'm not asking this too early, because I know you have spent time with you at events and know about your business, and I know you really are not afraid. I think a lot of us come into challenging situations, and it's easy to kind of put your head in the sand or run away and not really stand up to a situation the way it needs to be, because things can be so intense in this business. We're dealing with your home, your family, and your money. I always quote Jason O'Neill, who says that the 3 things any wise person would tell you not to get involved in, and that's what we're doing. But I preface it with all that because I want to really dig deep and see if you can give us an example of one of 2 things: a challenge that has presented you in this business and how you overcame it and kind of learned big lessons you'd like to share with us about it, or challenging situations in general you might share with us, and how to help us learn how to handle them as well as you do.
Well, in preparation for this interview, I thought about what could be the biggest challenge or the biggest failure, right? Because, we all like to talk about our successes, but clearly success is the failure that you said, okay, I will try one more time. And that's how you get to success. So it's like the other side of the failure. So
right.
I think really important is to learn and not necessarily even call it a failure, but call it a lesson, right? So if you lose, don't lose the lesson. Okay.
Exactly. Love. If you lose, don't lose the lesson.
Correct. And some of these lessons are very expensive, right? So, but if you lose, don't listen.
Yes.
I think that the biggest, I don't want to say it's a failure. It's just a realization much later in the business, with time, I realized that at the initial affiliation with any company, and I know you wanted me to also share my opinion on the affiliation, if it's important, the company important or not. So I think that initial research is extremely important. When I first started in the business, I really thought that it's not so much about the company. It is more about you, the agent. And that's partially true, because if I like you, the agent, most of the time I don't really care which company you work for. And if I don't like you as an agent, then I for sure don't care which company you work for, because I'm not going to work with you anyway.
Right.
So if I like you, the agent, and now I love the company that's behind you, that's when the true magic happens. Up until 5 years ago, I was with other companies, and with all my respect to competition, I always kind of felt that the brand that I was with previously was not really sufficient or not aligned with my own brand and values. And once I moved to Douglas Elliman, that's when magic happened. Really, my business tripled Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, our clients hire us. We hire the broker. The broker supports our business.
100%. And it's for the very first time in my career. And as you know, I'm part of many different organizations outside of my company. We are with the group that through which we met. I'm with Luxury Marketing Institute. I'm on the advisory board and so on and so forth. We go to a lot of international conferences, but not until I moved to Douglas Elliman, I really started getting real business and referrals from within the company.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I think that that's very important because a lot of, approximately 25% of my business now comes from intercompany referrals, which I think is extremely important. And prior to that, again, we both go to different conferences. We develop amazing relationship and we learn from each other. I always try to go outside of my immediate market area because in this business, unfortunately, no one is teaching you anything. You can be the best of friends, but if you brokers in the same area, tomorrow you are the worst competitors or the best competitors.
Right. You're up for the same client. So
Correct.
I still want to go back to your any lessons learned you can give us, or any stories you can give us that looked like a mistake and turned out to be a failure. I mean, or turned out to be kind of bringing a big aha. Do you have any examples for us of that?
Okay, so as I said, the research and affiliation, that's kind
Yeah.
of
Okay, so
really
that would be it. Is basically the company. Okay, I got
the
it.
other one, which we started this conversation also about.
Yeah.
If you want me to speak about auctions, I can certainly talk about that. This past June, we conducted luxury auctions because the market on North Shore, Long Island, especially in the upper tier, was a little bit slow, to say the least. And I felt that we need to employ different strategies in addition to everything else that we're already doing to help our sellers sell their homes. And we got affiliated or worked with a company, auction company, luxury auction company, and we did everything possible. And they did everything that they said they're going to do. So there were no regrets in that respect. However, the actual auction was not a success. It was not a success because no homes sold at that auction, despite all of the efforts and ton of previews and tremendous marketing and advertising, and we left no stone unturned. But at the end of the day, you can lead horses to water, but you cannot make them drink. So the offers that came in were not nearly high enough to make deals on these prospective properties. And of course, if you look at it from the perspective of ultimate success, right? Ultimate success would be if these homes are sold, and they were not. So this is a failure in a way. But I think also where my strength is, I always try to say, okay, it's not a failure, it's a lesson. And so what I learned during this process, that perhaps the residual success was a lot greater than the actual selling this home or not.
Exactly.
Because what happened was it shows us as brokers as well, my clients, the true state of the market or luxury market. And it's not like homes are not selling, everything sells. It's just a matter of time and matter of price.
Right.
So we can control the marketing, but 85% of marketing is pricing. So that allowed me to really use the market spoke. It's not me, Maria. It's not the auction company. It's the market telling us where we need to be in terms of pricing. So that's number one. Number two, even homes that were not part of that program, owners, after they saw what took place, they called me and they said, okay, let's make a deal. We have an offer. I know previously I told you that, the offer is low, but I really would like to sell my home. Go back to that buyer, make a deal. So we had tremendous price adjustments. We had quite a few homes that we sold as a result of that, not at the auction, but afterwards. So again, this is the failure that we were able to learn and turn into a lesson and turn into success.
Well, it sounds like, just to reiterate, because I have a lot of people ask me about auctions and should we do them and how do they work when you have a listing, and they kind of, a lot of people assume it's two different things, but I think it's important to recognize this. I learned from you when we were in DC together that auctions and listings can work together. They're not two different things, as we know.
Correct.
You can't,
Correct.
and when you have a listing and you bring the auction into it, you make the listing more powerful and the auction more powerful. The auction's a quick thing. It may or may not happen at the time of the auction, but I think,
Correct.
that doesn't mean it's not going to generate the interest to create that sale down the road. And I think, okay.
The properties are, presented at the auction, could be sold before the auction, at the auction, or after the auction. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the visibility and the exposure that my clients enjoy during that 6 weeks process, it was tremendous, because what auction company does, they take what we do over a period of, let's say, 12 to 18 months if it's a luxury properties, and some of them are taking even longer to sell, and they kind of condense that into 6 weeks process. So it's tremendous exposure. And at the end of the day, again, after you sell the homes, that even after the auction, or adjust the price and sell them later, I think ultimately it's a huge success. Yeah. And then again, company does things differently. There is also we had reserve auction to protect our sellers, but there's certain companies that do no reserve, and then clearly everything sells there, and then we can all work together. As I said, we don't have to be in competition with each other.
So explain to us the difference between reserve for everybody listening, so they understand the difference between reserve auction and an auction without a reserve.
Reserve auction is when you have a reserve price, and if the buyer hit that price or higher, then the property gets sold. If there's no reserve, then basically there's no floor, and regardless of how low the offer is, the owner commits to sell the property.
So here's a question: when you've done an auction, I can just putting myself in the seller's shoes. Do you have any pushback on, well, if I put a reserve price out, now everybody's going to know my bottom line, and now I've just negotiated against myself? Do sellers feel that way, or how do they get around that?
A reserve price is not disclosed.
Okay.
To a public.
Okay. Well, there you go. Perfect.
It's not disclosed. What's disclosed is an opening bid.
Okay.
Which is primarily lower than the reserve price, but low enough to entice people to start bidding for this property. But the actual reserve is not disclosed.
And the list price remains the same.
The reserve didn't meet the reserve.
And your list price remains your list price. You're not gonna.
We did not play with the list
exactly.
price, so adjust the list price, but then with Zillow and all of the other online marketing channels, it's very challenging to play with that, if you will.
But you promote the auction through the listing.
That's correct.
Great. I think that answers what you just said, but listening to it kind of from the horse's mouth, when I heard you talk about your experience with auctions before and someone who's actually done them, I think you've done a few, haven't you, with your listings, or have you done a few, or just one? Or
I only had this one, but we had multiple properties within one.
Okay, auction. So that's like that was like doing it 5 times.
So, yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's kind of.
Companies just take one property and we actually had a different concept, which was very interesting, because a variety of different price ranges would bring a variety of different buyers or investors. So we had one auction, but it was like 6 in 1.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So literally you brought interest to all the other properties. And I would wonder, just understanding this, sometimes our sellers get really nervous and they don't want to make mistakes, is when you've got a group of people doing it, it may have made the decision a little easier for everybody because everybody did it together. They didn't feel, I think sometimes people are afraid to do the auction because they're afraid they're putting up the I'm desperate flag. But when you're grouping up with a group of people to do it, it's creative and different, and one listing might generate interest for another listing and vice versa. So you kind of get that synergy. So that's
Absolutely.
Great. What was the biggest pro and the biggest con for you in doing an auction, as for you maybe, and for your sellers and your clients?
Pro, I felt that it would create urgency. because we're doing everything possible to sell luxury homes. And some of them get sold quickly, and some of them, especially if they were listed originally at much higher number, perhaps by another broker, it might take a while for the seller to align their motivation with the market expectations, if you will. And I felt that there was nothing wrong with our marketing or market. What was really missing, that piece of the puzzle, is the urgency on behalf of the buyers. Why? Because there was a lot to choose from. Okay, and if a few years ago, if I'm a luxury buyer and I saw a property and I like it, I better make an offer and move forward with the deal. These days, if I'm a luxury buyer and I see something that I like, chances are it will be here tomorrow at a better price. And I think that, the lack of urgency, what really was missing. And I think that the auction truly helped us create that urgency, because there was a deadline by which these homes will be sold, or supposed to be sold. And so that was kind of great factor that we reintroduced, in addition to all the marketing that we've done. Okay. And the biggest con, I think, was that I was a pioneer. And as you said, yes, I'm not afraid to lead the parade and, be a failure if need be, because I'm a big girl, and frankly, my integrity was not jeopardized. And I had very open and honest conversations with all my sellers. And I told them, look, I know it's new for you. It's also new for me. And we're in this together. And frankly, because they were protected by the reserve price, I knew that we had very little to lose and everything to gain.
That's great. And I think you might have mentioned, or I've heard of, people, you have an auction and the auction may not be, I don't even want to call, if a sale doesn't occur in the auction, I wouldn't call that unsuccessful. But the sale didn't occur, but a buyer might come back down the road and still make an offer on the property, and that you may not have gotten the same exposure that you have now because you've had the auction. So
Absolutely.
I think that's huge. I just think that's powerful. I spent a day with you, and we just touched on that, but it was really, really insightful, and I really, really wanted to get you on the podcast to share some of that experience, as well as all of your success. Top agent in Long Island for 3 years in a row. That's incredible.
Thank you.
So let's talk about some other things. What is your big, and some of it may or may not revolve around the auction and what you've shared with us, but what is your biggest aha about this business?
Well, in the very beginning, or up until probably a few years ago, I was very much struggling with trying to separate where business ends and personal kind of territory begins. I have 2 children. They were much younger at that time. Now they're both teenagers. But I always had a dilemma. Okay, let's say it's a weekend, and now it's Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon. We have open houses to host, buyers to show, and my son has a baseball game. Should I just go and be a baseball mom and support my son? And so we were trying to separate this kind of 2 universes, the business universe from the personal universe. And it was really tough, because it was constant kind of dilemma and struggle, if you will. And then I realized that there's no such thing, this whole balancing and balance, the myth, and separating where business starts or ends and personal begins. It's also a myth. These 2 universes collide, because I can be on a baseball field and talk to one of the other parent, and they become my clients. Or it could be my client that I'm showing properties, and all of a sudden we connected on a completely different level, and that became part of my personal universe. So after I stopped kind of torturing myself to trying to figure out and just embrace it, because in our business, there's no way to separate that.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that was probably the biggest aha moment. And, you know, regardless of where I'm at, business or personal kind of part of that same universe, the biggest thing is to be present. Okay. And when I'm with my clients, I don't pick up my phone if it's another client calls or, I'm with them. And when I'm with my children, unless it's absolute emergency, I don't pick up the phone when I'm with my children. So it is very important to be present in the moment and give your all. And then I also realized that, we are, God willing, going to have many, many more years to sell many, many more houses. But then the children grow up so fast that I started also inviting them and kind of helping in my business. Okay, it could be putting some labels on the mailing. It could be preparation for the open houses. When my daughter was younger and not as busy on weekends as she is right now, I would take her to the open house with me. She would help me turn the lights on. So again, I'm doing my job and I'm working in my business, but I'm also having quality time with my daughter, learning and teaching her to be an independent woman and have your own career going. So I think that that's probably was the biggest aha moment.
That's great. So many people talk about, they used to have a question, you may have seen it and I don't ask anymore, how do you find balance? I'm like, no, I'm not asking that question anymore because the answer is really exactly what you just said.
I think that, again, I'm not even looking for that balance anymore because the balance can be within an hour or within a week. Okay, when I go to my hot yoga practice and I try to do it at least 2 to 3 times a week, that hour is my balance. Okay, that's where I kind of
that's your me time. That's somebody said to me the other day, like, where do you get your me time? Yoga, same thing, every morning, 6 a.m. or at least 4 or 5. Yeah,
we have to feel our spiritual tank. We have to feel our energy tank to be a better real estate professionals, to be a better brokers for our clients, better parents, and so on and so forth. So I also every year take a vacation where I go by myself, no friends, no husband, no children. And this past year, I went to Sedona, Arizona, and I spent a week at the spa where you give it back to you. Okay?
Wow.
Fill your spiritual tank, you take care of your physical body. And I feel that that's my balance for another, 6, 8, 9 months to come. And when I feel I start kind of running on low, then again, I would develop that time and schedule it in my calendar where I can just be and disconnect completely. So I think that for me personally, that type of balance works a lot better than to try to figure out every single day, am I balanced today? Did I do this, and that? But yoga is probably my, as they say, private island. That mat is private island.
I love it. Me too. So when you go away for a week, how do you do that? Do you still take calls, or do you have somebody completely take over?
Well, it is not possible for someone to completely take over.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah,
that's another myth. Okay, I am still involved. I don't take every single call. I mean, at this point, we have very strong systems in place and procedures and operation manual, how things are being handled. But it's also all in preparation. I do have a team. I have my assistants that are in place. We plan accordingly that when I'm away, then my key team members are here and my assistants are here, and we know how things get handled. Usually I call them in the morning, we talk about the day and what the priorities are, and then I'll check in again probably closer to mid-afternoon, and if there's anything urgent, we'll get it addressed, and if it's not an emergency, then it can be addressed in a timely manner according to the situation.
Great. And what are you most excited about in your business as you move forward? You've been in 15 years, and you've already been top team and top agent for several consecutive years. Where are you going next with this?
Where I'm going next with this, I'm still extremely excited and come from place of gratitude. It's unbelievable, and it's interestingly enough that yesterday we're having a conversation with some of my team members is that how unpredictable every single day is in our business.
Yeah.
No matter how we try to structure it and put the time blocks and all of that. And we said, imagine just going to the office every single day for 25, 35, 40 years and doing the same thing over and over and over again. And that whole piece of excitement or surprise element is missing. That would be challenging.
Beautifully put, yes.
So I think the level of excitement comes from unknown, if you will, and what this new day will bring and how we are prepared to face that new day. But also the people that I meet on a daily basis, either clients that I already have in my sphere or absolutely new ones with different family dynamics, with different from different walks of life. It's just unbelievable to be part of and being able to touch so many people in their moving to, let's say, next chapter of their lives, either upsizing or downsizing, being part of some of the family dynamics. And I think it's a huge privilege. And I came to that realization very early in my career. And now every single day, not one day goes by where I don't feel grateful or privileged. And I think that that's what makes me the most excited about this business.
Oh, that's great. All right. So I've got 3 questions left for you. The first one is, in this business, these are just some final tips we're going to get out of you. Do you have a favorite tool or system or piece of technology that supports your business? Whether it's a CRM, usually it's a CRM or an app or...
Very, very, very interesting topic. Well, what's the best CRM? The one that's you use, right? And we know that there's so many.
If there's one that you use, yeah.
Tools,
yeah.
And resources, and there's new stuff coming out every day. And I think with technology, every single industry, especially real estate industry, is changing dramatically. And it is very important to stay current and really catch that wave before that wave catches you. That being said, I think that in high-tech environment, the most important thing is the high touch, and that's what's missing. My favorite tool right now is still my own website, which is luxurylongisland.com. It's a labor of love. I treat it as my other child. I started developing this over 10 years ago. It's being reborn for 3 times. Now it's all mobile and latest technology.
Oh, that's great. That's luxurylongisland.com?
Luxurylongisland.com. That's a lot of information for buyers and sellers. That's very robust searches for luxury homes on Long Island and other real estate. And I think that that's very important because I'm getting a lot of business from it, but I'm also organically come up very high on Google searches, which I'm very proud of, without paying $1 to Google. Google loves us for unique content, where I hired professional photographers to go to all these individual villages and enclaves and take beautiful photography, as well as creating, as well as writing unique content. So I think that that's probably my favorite piece. In terms of all the other technology, I do have multiple CRMs, because that's another kind of aha realization moment, that there's not one CRM that can do it all. And that's the bottom line. I have one as my dirty bucket where everything goes and we can find whatever we want. And then I also have a database or CRM that I use for my warm leads, my sphere of influence, where we can track the university anniversary reports and things like that. So, to me, I think the biggest challenge in terms of technology, that there's a lot of shiny objects and we try to run after all of them, but I just wait for one day when they all can finally talk to each other.
Yes.
Right? So there's no double entries or triple entries and double work and all of that. So I think we moving towards that, but as an industry, we're not near
yes.
there yet.
There's so many different tools that we have, and there doesn't seem to be a way, at least not yet, to put them all together. So if there were one book you would recommend our listeners read, what would that be? What book has most impacted you?
I must say Miracle Morning.
Oh, okay. So do you implement that?
Miracle Morning, and now there's a Miracle Morning for real estate agents, which
I didn't know that. I'm very familiar with Miracle Morning. So
yes,
that's for real estate agents.
There's a small chapter. They interview me for that book as well. But
oh, great. Okay.
No, the reason why I even agreed to that, because I already read Miracle Morning prior. And I think that it is extremely impactful, small. You can read it in an hour, 2 hours. And what was the most impactful for me is that the way you can create your own routine. You don't have to follow but the thought of having that ritual in the morning to start your day right is extremely important. And if you feel successful by 8 a.m., you have no other choice but be successful for the rest of the day. And that's, I think, the biggest underlying theme in that particular book. And then, of course, the second one, which is the Miracle Morning for real estate agents, I think is even more applicable to us in our industry.
So I can't wait to find you. What part of the book are you in?
Huh?
Are you at? Did they quote you in it, or they just interviewed you?
Yes.
Oh, great. What part of the book are you in?
I don't remember the exact page, but I can pick it up and send it to you.
We're going to find it. I will find it. So, but it's Miracle Morning for real estate agents. That's great. I didn't realize they had one of those yet. So we are unfortunately running out of time, because as you talk, I think about a million questions I want to ask you about your listing presentation, about your team, about the things you've learned. And I may beg you to come back on and share that with us. But for this one, I do want to know one last thing, and that is, what is the one thing that you would, from our interview today, if we remember anything from this interview, what would you have that be?
I think a lot of people are asking about success in real estate. And the harder I work, the more successful I get. So what I want our viewers to take away from this interview, that there's no magic to success. It's hard work and hanging in there. And I think that that's the biggest thing that I've learned. And in our business, you have to be consistent and hard work that will pay off. And if you face a failure, turn this into a lesson, hang in there, continue with your hard work, and then success will show up.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Maria. That was incredible. I wanted to mic drop on that one. That was like, done. That was great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's good to see you.